Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is the onX Hunt 101 for August 22nd. Obviously today, we're just going to give it a couple of minutes to let everybody get settled in, let everyone get logged in and situated and everything. A couple housekeeping things while we wait. Your audio and video are turned off, so you don't have to worry about, if you got noise in the background or anything like that going on. We can't see you, we can't hear you. If you do have questions that come up during the class, if you want us to explain something more or there's something that wasn't clear, drop them in the Q&A box below. We do have a couple of our customer support folks on in the background answering those questions. If you do have questions that are more pertaining to your account, things like, hey, when's my membership renew, or anything billing wise, password wise, things like that, we probably won't be able to get to them today. It's just it takes a little bit of time to go in the background and pull up your account and everything. For questions like that, send us an email to help@onxmaps.com. Our folks will be able to pull up your account there and answer any of those kind of billing or account specific questions. This class is being recorded, so if you have to drop off early, no worries. We'll send you an email tomorrow with the recording included in there. It'll also be up on the onX Hunt YouTube channel. Usually we can get that up by tomorrow. Sometimes YouTube takes a little bit of time. It might not be till Thursday, but we'll have this up so that you can watch it in the future. And that onX Hunt YouTube channel does have a playlist, onX Hunt Masterclasses. We've been doing these masterclasses since kind of the spring of 2022, so we have a ton of recorded classes on there. Old 101s, probably don't need to go back and watch those, but we've got species-specific stuff like how to scout for, elk, pheasants, white-tailed deer, you name it, all kinds of different hunting topics up on there. So it's the late summer right now. I'm sure everyone else is getting that hunting itch like I am. If your season hasn't kicked off yet, I know some folks already have, but go check out some of those and hopefully scratch that itch a little bit until you can get out hunting. Final housekeeping, we are doing a giveaway at the end of the class. We're giving away some onX Hunt t-shirts. Doesn't cost you anything to enter, but stick around for the end. We'll post that link in the chat. And you'll get entered to win some t-shirts. We'll email the winners tomorrow and get those sent out. So what is on the docket for today? Kind of a list of what we're going to go through. We're going to start with, before one, we're going to talk about some of the different onX Hunt membership levels, what those mean, what they get you. We're going to talk about how to find your location, use the compass. We're going to get into map layers. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of the app and of the presentation. We're going to go through a bunch of different layers that we find useful. We're going to talk about using offline maps so that you can use onX when you don't have cell service. We're going to go through our map tools, so things like waypoints, tracker, area shapes, line distances, router, things like that. Base maps and imagery, we have some new imagery options where if you've used onX in the past, we've added some things this spring and summer that we think you're going to find interesting. We're going to talk about searching for landowners, searching for coordinates, searching for landmarks, things like that. And then we'll wrap up with a Q&A and a giveaway. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pop over to my phone and I'm going to share my screen there so that you can look at the app while I'm talking. So give me a moment to get that started. And let me get this screen taken off here. Perfect. So this is the onX Hunt app. When you log in, you should see something that looks something like this. It may be zoomed in a little bit. Here you can see I'm located at the onX Hunt office here in Missoula, Montana. So that blue dot there in the center, that's my location. That is what I am, that is where I'm located. So if you're not seeing that blue dot on your map, if I just move it away here for a second, if it looks something like this and you're like, man, I'm not seeing my location on here, in the lower right-hand corner, tap that circle. That is going to pull up your location there. Okay, so If you tap that and it gives you a message like location service is not enabled, you have to give permission, something along those lines, that means you haven't given onX Hunt permission to access your phone's GPS. So we have to have that permission to be able to show your location on the map. So if you had denied that, you need to go in and approve that. Should only take you a step or two, and then you'll be able to pull up your location there. So just a quick glance around the map, what I'm looking at here. If I pull up my mouse here, you see some orange boxes with some names on them. Those are going to be our private parcels. So that is what you get when you upgrade from a basic membership to a premium or an elite membership. That's kind of what people know onX for, right? Is our property ownership, property boundaries. If I zoom out a little bit, just going to show you. This is our government lands layer that you're seeing. We'll dive into that in a bit. But that different coloration, those are all the different public lands. So if you have a trial membership or a paid membership, you should be seeing some of this type of information on your screen. So again, if you have premium, we have 2 premium memberships. We have a premium 1 state membership, gets you this land ownership information for 1 state. We have a premium 2 state, which is brand new. I think we've had that less than a month, but that lets you get information for 2 states. So if you're like, hey, I live on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin, I hunt those 2 states, that might be a good option for you to just have that premium 2 state. And then the elite membership, which we'll dive into a little bit deeper a little bit later on. Elite gets you access to all 50 states plus Canada, plus a whole suite of elite mapping tools, some of which we'll talk about today, as well as some discounts on gear, things like hunting gear, some different services as far as tag applications and research and things like that. So we'll talk about that here in a little while. So let me get back. I'm going to bring the map back to my location. That location button in the lower right, if I click on it again, you're going to see that it turns to look kind of like an arrow, and you see that my map rotated. I have this sight cone coming off of my dot. As I rotate my phone, if I hold it up for the camera, you can see I'm moving my phone around. That's going to rotate the map on my screen so that whatever direction I'm facing is up. Instead of, in the normal mode, north is always up, like we're used to on most maps. Here, whatever direction I'm facing. So this is super useful for when I'm hiking. If I'm following a trail and I want to be able to see what's coming up ahead of me, I put it into this compass mode, and then I'm able to see, what's on my right, what's on my left coming up, what fork do I need to take. If I'm driving, and if you're like me and you have an older vehicle and you don't have the ability to show onX in your dash, you can do that. An addition that we made to the compass mode is right here. If I click this little compass in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that now at the top, I have a heading, so I can get the degrees that I'm facing if I want to see that. I can also kind of tell how far away things are, especially if I zoom in a little bit. This will start to make a little more sense. You can see along the left-hand side, I have those different yardage markers that'll show me about how far away something is. So you can use that just like at a glance. Hey, how far away is, obviously I'm in town, everything's buildings, but I might be able to look and say, hey, how far away is that trailhead? How far away is that that opening in the timber? How far away is that pond where we might be jump shooting ducks? Whatever it is. You can kind of get a glance that way. What you can also do is tap this rangefinder button up here, kind of on the right-hand side. And now I've got, let me zoom in a bit here. Hold on a second. Here we go. Makes it a little bit easier to see like this. So now what I can do is I'm just dragging this little dot. I put my finger on it and I'm dragging it up right now, where I can measure pretty close to exact, how far away something is that I'm seeing. So what I'm doing here is let's say I ranged something with my rangefinder, my handheld laser rangefinder, and it was 359 yards away. I can go into my compass mode, point my phone in that direction, range it out to 359 yards. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this waypoint button here, and that's going to mark a waypoint on that spot. I can edit it like I can all of my other waypoints, which we'll get to that a little more in depth here in a minute. But if I just hit done, now I have a waypoint on, let's say I ranged a deer 359 yards away, and let's just say, hey, I don't have a great shot from where I am right now, or let's say I'm bow hunting, right? Obviously, I'm not taking that shot. I need to get closer. Now I have a waypoint, I have a frame of reference, I've got a landmark on my phone where if I need to dip down and get out of sight or go through some timber, where I at least have some idea of where the deer was or the bear was or elk or whatever at some point. And I know that I can get, get close to that at least. Another way you can do that, or another use for that is, let's say I shoot an animal, say I'm rifle hunting and it's 350 yards away. What I can do is, I hopefully ranged it before I shot it. I can put a waypoint where that animal was, and then now I have a spot to start blood tracking. All kinds of different uses for this. So that's kind of the 1,000-foot level of that. We can go into it more deep. This is a 101, so we are going to not go as in-depth into that, just in the interest of time. I'm going to click this exit button, and the lights just turned out on me in the office here. They're on timers. I'll be back in 10 seconds. I think that might have been faster than 10 seconds. All right, so that's the compass mode. That's finding your location. If I want to get out of it, I just tap that button again. I rotate back to north. Getting into our map layers. In the lower left-hand corner, I'm clicking this button, Hunt Map Layers. It's going to bring up this layer menu. If you're a premium member, you're probably only seeing one state listed there. So Minnesota, if you're Minnesota, Alabama, whatever. This account has an elite membership on it. So I have 2 states turned on. If you are elite and you're saying, hey, I paid for all 50 states, why am I not seeing all 50 states there? It's because we don't have them all turned on. In fact, we recommend only having the ones turned on that you need. So to turn them on, if I scroll down here, you'll see the states that I have turned on listed at the top, Minnesota and Montana. And then the rest will be listed alphabetical along with Canada. If anybody from north of the border is watching, that's where you can turn that on. So let's say I'm going to go to Florida. All I do is click that button. If I go back up here, I can see that I have Florida turned on. I can see that I have a Florida folder in my layers. I can click on Florida to open it up and see the available layers there. Every state is going to have private lands and government lands and possible access. Almost every state has hunting zones. I believe Illinois is the only one we don't have zones for. And I believe that's because their deer zones are their counties. But I believe every other state has some sort of hunting zones there, whether they're deer zones, waterfowl zones, fur bearer zones, different game bird zones. I'm actually going to remove Florida to illustrate this a little better on Montana. We see this a lot more with western states, partly because they typically have more huntable, at least big game species. So if I go into my Montana folder, you can see I have a whole bunch of layers available to me here. We'll get to some of these in a minute. On the Montana hunting districts, if I click View Options, this is where I can select what species I am seeing or what species hunting districts. Your state, they might not be called districts. They might be deer permit areas. They might be game management units. They may be hunt zones. Every state does it a little bit different. In Montana, we call them districts. So that's what they're listed as. Most states are going to default to their deer district because in most states, that's the most commonly hunted animal. Not all, but most, especially in the lower 48. let's say I drew an antelope tag. Antelope archery kicked off here a week ago today in Montana. I've actually seen some success photos from people, which is pretty cool. All I have to do is click antelope hunt districts and close, and then I'm going to see those. If I zoom out here in Montana, what that looks like on the map are these green lines. Those are the antelope hunt districts in Montana. You can see west of the Continental Divide, not a whole lot of antelope, so I don't see those districts there. If I want to go back, all I have to do, open up that menu again, click View Options, and I'm going to switch it back to deer, elk, lion, because that's going to be the first big game animals I'm going to be hunting this year, deer and elk. A couple other things to point out here. If you're not seeing private lands, if you're like, I've got an elite membership or I've got premium for Montana, for example, you're saying I'm not seeing private lands, number one thing to check is that layers menu. Make sure this layer's turned on. I almost always have it turned on. The only time I turn it off is like when I'm demoing stuff like this. Private lands, government lands, hunting districts, possible access, I also almost always have turned on. That possible access layer is going to show you private lands that may be open to hunting and other recreation. So common types of possible access lands are timber company lands. So if Weyerhaeuser or, Plum Creek, I don't think they have much anymore, Stimson or some of those lumber companies in the upper Midwest, you might find some Blandin or UPM Blandin paper company land where it's privately owned. It's not National Forest or BLM or something, but they oftentimes will allow public access. Nature Conservancy does this a bunch. Different local land trusts or conservancies a lot of times will allow access. So this layer is telling you this is a spot to check out. It's not guaranteeing that, yes, you can hunt there, but you might want to check with Weyerhaeuser Timber, for example. Check their website and see if that particular piece, if they allow hunting access. Sometimes they charge a fee to get through the gate or something, but just kind of shows you that. Another one I have turned on is the block management. So that one it's going to be different depending on what state you're in. Block management is Montana's public access to private lands program, where it's typically walk-in access in Montana. We have a couple different types, but type 1, there's a sign-in box. You go there, you grab your slip of paper, you fill out some information about yourself. You put one part in the box, you keep another part with you. That's your permission slip so that they know you've checked into that property. In Kansas, this is called walk-in hunter access, or WIHA. North Dakota, it's public lands open to sports, or private lands open to sportsmen, plots. Access yes in Wyoming. I believe that's what Idaho calls theirs as well. Not every state has it, but more and more are adding it. I know Minnesota just added it a couple years ago. It's mostly a thing west of the Mississippi and in the kind of the Great Lakes states, upper Midwest. Iowa has it. Southeast, I think Alabama might be the only one I know off the top of my head that has it, but a few states have it and they're adding more of it. So that's something to check out. Some of these other ones I don't often turn on, the Montana Hunting District's portions. That is for some special tags where, there's an elk tag in Unit 270 and there's a couple different portions and yours might only be good for one portion or the other, things like that. So the thing with layers is turn on the ones you need and turn off the ones you don't. You can really customize your map. If you're like, hey, I don't really care about hunting districts. I hunt pheasants in Montana and there's not a district for pheasants, turn it off, right? Then you don't need it if you don't need it for your specific pursuit. So those are our state folders. Every state's a little bit different depending on the data that we get from the state, depending on different programs that they have in place. So your state may have more or less layers. Just depends on the kind of information we're able to get from the state there. Scrolling down, if I go to current conditions, I have my active wildfire layer. That's a big one right now. That's turned on. I'm going to show you what that looks like. All of these little red dots are active wildfires. If I zoom out, actually, let me turn on Canada here for a second so you can see that, because it'll really start to pop. So you can see British Columbia, a lot of fires going on there, right? Those are all active wildfires that we have information for. If I go back to Montana, I'm going to zoom in on one here. This is the Big Knife Fire just north of us on the Flathead Reservation. This is one we've been seeing some smoke off and on, in town here. So what you're seeing there, that red outline, that kind of blob, is showing you the perimeter of the fire. So where it's currently burning. And with anything on the map, whether it's a fire or anything else, if you want to learn more information about it, all you have to do is tap on it, and it's going to pull up this little card here along the bottom. So if I pull this up, I can see this is Flathead Reservation. And then if I scroll down, I can see information about that fire. So it's the Big Knife Fire. Our source last updated today, and we check it multiple times a day. So we ping our data source that updates us on those fires. Last I checked on this, I believe it's 4 times a day. It may be 6, but it's multiple times a day. We're pinging that source to get the most up-to-date information. That source doesn't update every day necessarily. Some fires, it might only be every 3, 4, 5 days that they update. So we'll tell you, hey, we checked this today. They haven't updated it since Sunday or whatever that date is. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my phone here. So it's going to tell you what percent is contained, where it is, who is managing the fire. In this case, it's the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA. It might be Forest Service, it might be BLM, it might be National Park Service, depending on where the fire is, where you are. So that is the active wildfires layer. I'm going to go back to my current conditions. Some other ones, I'm not going to demo all of these. Some other ones you might look at. The smoke forecast goes hand in hand with fire season. Air quality, similar thing. Drought data, you can pull that up and really zoom out and get kind of a good look nationwide at what level of drought a certain area is in. CWD positive counties, zones and locations. If you're in a state that has CWD, we worked with the National Deer Association to show counties that have had a positive test, whether it's in wild or captive deer, and then places where there are special hunting regulations, special transportation regulations, things like that. That's going to be your zones and locations. So you can turn those on. Moving down in our layer menu here, we're going to go to land and access. There's a couple here that I think are super useful. Wilderness areas should be turned on for you. That's big W wilderness, federally designated wilderness areas. That's going to show you those, those non-motorized areas. Again, most of those are west of the Mississippi. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas. These are going to be refuges for the most part. So I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to find one. I found one up here. Now I've never been here. This is in northeastern Montana, so I'm not trying to hotspot or anything. I just picked a refuge. So you can see it tells you this is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service refuge. There is hunting allowed here. They have a couple different units. A lot of refuges are broken up into 2 different units or more than 2, where they may have different rules as far as what dates you're allowed to hunt, what species you're allowed to hunt, what methods, things like that. For example, there's a refuge south of town here where part of it is only archery whitetail hunting, and part of it, once duck season starts, it's only waterfowl, or at least it's on certain days of the week, is only waterfowl, for example. Again, if I tap on it, tells me Bowden National Wildlife Refuge. I probably mispronounced that. Tells me some more information. And then we will link you to the Fish and Wildlife Service website. So you can click on that visit website link, that one that says more info. That'll bring you to the Fish and Wildlife Service where you can learn more in depth. Hey, what exactly are the huntable species here? What are the special rules and regulations? What do I need? Is it Non-toxic shot only, for example, if I want to hunt pheasants here or something like that. So at Fish and Wildlife Service Refuge, they've got those all over the country. There's probably one close to you somewhere, so check that one out. Couple more I wanted to highlight there. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever layers are excellent sources of information as well. These are going to show places where RMEF and PF and QF have done projects where they've acquired land and oftentimes made it public. Sometimes it's now National Forest or BLM land or a state WMA, Wildlife Management Area, something like that, to show you, the kind of work that they're doing, where they're doing it. I'll give you an example of what that looks like here. I've got a pheasant one up over here. So this is it's a fairly well-known one in Montana, this Coffee Creek property. So that style on the map here is telling me that's a Pheasants Forever property. It's still technically private because Pheasants Forever owns that land. But they allow public access on there. It was acquired in 2002. I apologize, my phone is, it's got a broken screen. So I'm getting some issues with, just like that. Awesome. Probably time for a new phone jack. If it keeps up, I will just go over to my web map here. That's what I'm gonna do. My apologies, folks, having some technical difficulties here. So give me one moment to switch over. Time for a new phone. So here I got my web map. What I did there, it's the same map we were just looking at. It's just on my computer because my phone was acting up. If you've never looked at this before, you go to onxmaps.com and log in with your same email and password. And this is what you'll see. You can see if I go back up to Coffee Creek here, all your waypoints, everything is gonna transfer over. So again, same type of deal. If I click on this, I see this is Pheasants Forever property. It's enrolled in the block management program, so there's public access allowed. You can see, how many acres it is, when it was acquired, all that different information there. So if I go back to my layers, we were in land and access. I'm going to jump to roads, trails, and rec. Again, these should all be shown in your map layers, whether you're on the computer like I am now, or whether you're on your phone, like I was a moment ago. I'm going to get back to Missoula. The trails layers that I have turned on at all times are trails, trail slope, trail mileages, recreation sites, and this motorized roads and trails. And that's kind of a big one. I'll show you what that looks like here. The motorized roads and trails are going to be these purple roads here. They're going to be typically on Forest Service land. But if I click on it, I can see all this information about the road. And what's really important to me is open and close dates. So in Montana and in a lot of Western states, they will close Forest Service roads during different times of the year. Sometimes it's because they're closing them down in the spring because it's an elk calving area and they don't want people driving in there disturbing the elk at a vulnerable time of year. In Montana, a lot of them will close here like next Friday. And they'll close some down before archery season. And then they'll close another group in October, right before rifle season starts. And then a bunch of them will close right when rifle season ends. So they'll have it be, some of them will be open all the way through kind of November. That Sunday after Thanksgiving is our traditional close of our general season here. And then they will close those roads kind of to protect wintering areas, again, when the elk and deer are kind of at their most vulnerable. You can still walk on those roads most of the time, but they kind of give those animals a place to kind of try to get away from some of the people and some of the road noise and things like that. So that's something to turn on and take a look at. It's also going to tell you what kind of vehicle is allowed on that road. So this one is telling me overland, which is like my Chevy Suburban I drive or a pickup truck. High clearance 4x4, side-by-side ATV dirt bike, they're all legal on this road. If I go over, I'm gonna go over to Blue Mountain here. I click on one of these trails. This is a dirt bike trail. So you can bike on it, you can hike on it, you can horseback ride on it, or you can ride a dirt bike. It's not wide enough for an ATV or a side-by-side or a pickup truck. So that's something to always keep in mind, something to look on. We do style them a little bit differently. You can see here's the road you can drive in on in your pickup truck, and here's kind of a parking area. Then here's where the dirt bike riding area starts. So something to take a look at there. If I show you just what a regular hiking trail looks like, let me close out of this. Why was that like that? All right. So this is the M Trail. If you've been to Missoula, you've seen the M. A lot of Western towns have, their letter up on the side of a mountain. People like to hike to them. These different colored lines are all the different trails, and they're colored differently because I have the slope layer turned on. So that's going to be this one right here. If I turn it off, you can see it just goes to black and white. When I turn it on, you can see if it's green, like this Fire Road trail here, is pretty flat. It kind of just side hills along the mountain. It goes to yellows, a little more steep, and orange ones, even a little bit more steep, and then the red, that's really steep. So that's useful when you're hunting if you say, hey man, I'm just looking for a leisurely hunt today, or I'm not physically fit enough to really do a long push on a red trail. That's me. I'm raising my hand. I'm one of those folks that didn't hike enough this summer. So I'm probably going to avoid some of these trails, at least until I get into hunting shape again. On the other hand, you might say, nope, that's me. I'm ready to hike all that, and I know that's going to keep some people away. So I'm going to look for those trails to try to get away from people. Now, obviously, this trail here, right on the edge of Montana, or right on the edge of Missoula, University of Montana property, you're probably not going to be, hunting up here, of course, just using this for demonstration purposes. So that's your road trails and rec folder, kind of in a nutshell there. Scrolling down to our next one, trees, crops, and cover. The one that I always have turned on is our timber cuts layer. So that is going to show you any place logging has occurred on national forest. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to northern Minnesota here. I know some places that have been logged. So if I zoom in here, what you're seeing here, this 2015, and it might be a little hard to see, but there's a line here. This is showing a logged area. If I go up here, you see there was some logging in 2012, 2015, 2017. So it'll tell you the year. And again, if you click on it, it's going to tell me this was in the Chippewa National Forest. They named this timber cut Cupcake. I don't know if that means it was easy or what the deal was. Single tree selection cut, so they were logging a single species. Sometimes this will say clear cut, sometimes this will say fuel load reduction, something like that, right? Depending on the type of cut it was. And again, that's national forest only. For the state of Minnesota and a couple of other states, we do have, I know Pennsylvania has this, I know Minnesota, those are the two off the top of my head. We do have like a forest disturbance layer. So in Minnesota, if I zoom out a little bit, so these are logging activities, logging events that took place not on national forest land. So the state of Minnesota DNR keeps track of all that. So this is on some state forest here. You can see it's not as detailed. They just don't take as detailed of information or don't put it in their data set. So I know there was some logging here in 2015. That's about all I know. So again, we have that in there because the state of Minnesota, the DNR, makes that publicly available to us. If you're like, man, why don't I have that in Michigan? It might be something to check with the DNR there and say, hey, do you guys have this data? Is it publicly available? Can we get it, into the onX app? Like I said, I think Pennsylvania is the other state. I know we have some timber cut information on the non-Forest Service land there on the state land and some of the private stuff. Going back to my layers, we have a whole bunch of crop and tree species information. So if I go to crop distribution and I turn that on, if I click on details, these are the crop species that we have data for. So corn, soybeans, alfalfa, all the way to millet, sugar beets, cotton, peas, you name it, we've probably got it if it's growing in your area. I'm going to get down to more central Minnesota to kind of illustrate this a little bit better. So when I zoom in here, you see these different colors popping up on my map. And if I hover my cursor over it, it's going to tell me what is growing there. On your phone, you'll have to click on it for it to tell you. But once I do, it tells me corn, and it could be corn, sweet corn, pop, or orange corn. Same thing with soybeans, just soybeans, right? Now this data is collected in the fall. That's when they do the flyovers with their special cameras where they're able to tell what is planted where. I believe it's the USDA that gathers that data. And they will fly over, they'll aggregate that data, and then they make it available to us in, I believe it's typically February. So this data is from last fall. And you might say, well, what good does that do me? I'm hunting this fall. I don't care that it was corn last year. If you know what the crop rotation is like in your area, like I can tell in this part of central Minnesota where I grew up, typically if a field was soybeans, most likely it's going to be corn this year. They'll do that rotation. Not a guarantee, of course. It's not always. It could be soybeans again this year. It could be maybe they enrolled in CRP or they're leaving it fallow or something. But by and large, they do a corn soybean rotation. So if it was corn last year, it might be soybeans this year. If I'm out in western Montana, if I get my map back here, I'm going to go up here. I think there's some alfalfa here, if I remember correctly. This is an alfalfa field. It's typically going to stay alfalfa for a number of years in a row. Pretty good bet that's going to stay alfalfa. That's probably going to be hay again this year. If I go to kind of central Montana where we grow a lot of wheat and barley and things like that, pretty good chance it's still going to be those small grains. Like if I'm looking for Hungarian partridge, everybody knows they like small grains. They like wheat and stuff like that. I'm going to be keen in on those fields. Dove season's coming up. I might be looking for sunflowers. Depends on what area you're in. Everything, every region's a little bit different. Every soil's a little different. They might do some different rotations, but that's something that you can use just to get another kind of idea of what's going on in your area. I'm going to turn off the crop distribution. While I'm in western Montana, I'm going to highlight the historic wildfire layer. So if I turn this on, this is going to show me previous year's fires. So we talked about the active wildfire layer earlier. This is going to show us, what burned in 22, 21, 20, and so on going backwards. This was the Lolo Peak fire south of town here in 2017. You can kind of see it labeled here. Again, if I click on it, Lolo Peak fire, it gives you the ID, September 2017. You can see it burned a lot. You can still, drive along Highway 12 here and see a lot of burnt trees and, a lot of scars left over from that fire. So that's something that I will turn on when I'm scouting. Mushroom hunters love this in the spring, looking for morels. All kinds of animals like to go to those burned areas the next year and couple years afterwards where that fresh green growth is coming up because the canopy was disturbed. This fire was pretty severe. So if it's a real severe one, it may take a few years for it to come back. So that's, something to keep an eye on. As I zoom out, you can start to see some in Idaho here, in the Frank Church and in the Bitterroot Selway, places like that. Moving down, we have all of these tree species layers. We're not going to be able to go into all of them. I'm going to go back to Minnesota here just because there's a little bit more diversity of trees versus what we have in western Montana. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on our deciduous versus coniferous. So what this is going to tell me at a glance, are these, evergreen trees? Are these pine, spruce, balsam, etc.? Or are these oak, aspen, basswood, you name it. So I can kind of get at a glance here. I can see, all right, these are coniferous, these are deciduous. If you're just concerned with finding those differences, deciduous versus coniferous is what you want to turn on. If you really want to drill down and see what exactly type of coniferous and deciduous trees we're talking about, you can turn on those layers. So for example, I know this area is aspen and birch. This area is pine. This area is larch and tamarack. There's a big tamarack swamp in here. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can start to see these blocks. Each one of those blocks is about 30 by 30 meters. So it's going to give you the dominant tree species in that 30 by 30 meter section. Does that mean that this area is all elm ash cottonwood? No. It's going to be a mixture, like a lot of forests are. That's the dominant species there. Same thing here, aspen, birch. There's going to be some pines mixed in there. There's going to be some spruce mixed in there as well. That's the dominant tree species there. Couple more that are super helpful for hunters. Acorn producing oaks and young aspen forests. So I turned on the young aspen forest. You can see that here. In this area of northern Minnesota, we're not going to find a lot of acorn producing oaks, but a lot of young aspen forests. So what that means is aspens that are typically 15 years old or less. So that's going to be for you grouse hunters, woodcock hunters. That's going to be super helpful. Deer love to hang out in those fresh cuts and eat those fresh shoots. Major food source for them in that part of the country. Other parts of the country, your acorn producing oaks are going to be huge. Now what that is showing you, let me see if I can find one here quick. I should have found one earlier. Not a whole lot in this part of the state. At any rate, the acorn producing oaks, that is going to show you oak trees that are capable of producing acorns. So it's not a guarantee that there's acorns this year, but they're mature enough to throw acorns. Sometimes they're on a cycle where it's every other year or every so many years where they produce like a bumper crop of acorns. So that's something you can turn on to kind of get a look at that. If I turn on the wetlands layer, that's when I can turn on to see, you can see, I talked about a tamarack swamp earlier, a lot of that up in here. That's this woody wetland, meaning it's a wetland that has a lot of woody shrubs and trees in it. If it's more of an herbaceous wetland, this is going to be more of your classic, swamp grass, cattails, bulrushes, tules, depending on what part of the country you're in, things like that. And our final section of our map layers here is our wildlife layers. These are ones that I think of mostly as scouting layers. So if I get out back to Montana here, I can turn on, just going to show you one here, Boone and Crockett layer. That's going to show me where the Boone and Crockett white-tailed deer, counties that have entries, and it's kind of like a heat map. You can see, like you might expect, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, some of the hotbeds for white-tailed deer hunting. You get down into the Southwest, not so much. You can turn on, whatever species you want to see to get a look. If you're just looking for, hey, I want to go to a spot where I might have a chance at a really big American elk, as they call them in the Boone and Crockett record book. Arizona's pretty good. Utah's pretty good. Kind of no secrets there, right? And you can kind of get a look at where those trophy quality or trophy class animals have been taken. So that's the layer library. There's a ton of layers in there we didn't go over. Just in the interest of time, we're already 45 minutes in. There's a lot more in there. What I would recommend is spend some time poking around in there. Take a look at what might be helpful to you. And if you're like, man, I don't know what that layer is, most of them are going to have this details here. You can turn it on to get some more information about it. If you don't find it useful, just leave it turned off. I have some layers in there that I turn on, maybe just for scouting or maybe when I'm applying for tags in other states. And then I never use them when I'm out in the field just because it's not pertinent information to me. That's the cool thing about it. You can kind of make the map your own. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can use the onX map when you're offline. So on your computer or on your phone, excuse me, in the lower left-hand corner, it's going to say offline maps. On my computer, it's in this upper left-hand corner, offline maps. Now my phone is on the fritz right now, so unfortunately I can't demo that exactly for you on the phone, but it's very similar steps on the computer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pick a spot at random. Let's say I'm gonna go down in the tobacco roots here. Again, I've never been here, not trying to hotspot anything for anybody. I'm gonna click offline maps. On your phone, tap offline maps, and then tap new offline map. And you'll see a red box come up, and the map outside of that's gonna be darkened a little bit, inside's gonna be highlighted. Whatever is within this box is what's gonna be saved for offline use. So I can still move it around on your phone. You just move it around with your finger, get it lined up how you want. Let's say, let's get most of this Forest Service in here. That's looking pretty good. And then I can choose my resolution. Now this is gonna dictate your map size and the image resolution. So I can go to low and get a really big map, medium, or high and get a small map. Most of the time what I do is I go to the medium size map because it gives me a pretty good size area to cover, and the imagery between the medium and high resolution is not that much of a difference to me. Myself personally out in the field, I've never really had a time where I've said, man, I wish I had a high resolution map. It is nice to have it if you're in an area, you know, like when I go to northern Minnesota and deer hunt, we kind of have our stand set, we hunt the same area. I use the high resolution map because I know we're gonna be in that small area. And it's a little bit smaller download typically on my phone. When I'm out in western Montana, hunting elk, man, I don't know where the elk are gonna be. They could move miles from one day to the next. I'm gonna wanna save a big area. So I'll use the medium. I'm gonna name my map. This is just a test. I always recommend naming your maps. I just deleted like 100 maps that I had that didn't have a name. They all just said like map 7122. I don't know at a glance where that map is. So what I actually could do here is I could name it tobacco roots so that when I have it saved later on, when I go back and let's say I have 100 maps saved on my phone, I know, oh, I got one in the tobacco roots, I'm good. Or, oh, I have one around Missoula, I have one in South Dakota where I pheasant hunt, etc. Hit the save button. Now what this does is this saves this area to my account. And then when I go back to my phone, when it starts working properly again, I'm gonna download that onto my phone. If you're saving the map directly on your phone, which is how most people do it, you just hit that save button and it'll start downloading right away, okay? This is handy for if you're doing some scouting and you just want to save them all right here while you're on the computer, or if you have a large number of them to save. I find it easy to save a lot of maps. So what I can do here, I talked about saving a lot of maps. Let's say I want to save a bigger area than just that one map. I can start putting them side by side here. Now I didn't name that one. I just made the mistake I told you not to make. Do as I say, not as I do. You know, if I want to kind of quilt these together or grid these together, I do this quite a bit and I'll save an entire hunt unit in this fashion. Or if you're, you know, classic example of like pronghorn hunting, a lot of times that involves driving around to a lot of different areas and looking at a lot of different pronghorn potentially. I used to have almost all of eastern Montana saved in 10-mile maps because there's a tag over there that's good for multiple different units. So I would save them. So you can do something like that and save them on your phone. Process is very similar there as well. You know, so you can kind of stitch those together and save them. So then when you're out of service, when you're out, you know, you park the truck, You're ready to go hunting. You go into that offline maps menu, and if you open it up on your phone, there'll be a button there that says go offline. You can tap that, and that will tell your phone to pull up those maps and use that data instead of trying to draw down or pull down, over your cell connection to pull down that mapping data. 9 times out of 10, what I do when I'm out in the field is I put my phone into airplane mode so that it does a couple of things. It's going to automatically put my map into offline mode so that it doesn't try to use the cell towers. Like, let's say I have 1 bar of service or 2 bars of service. That's not enough for the app to really be able to download that aerial imagery and all these property boundaries and all of this trail information, stuff I want to see. But it's going to try to, because there is some cell signal, and if I let it sit long enough, it'll download it. I don't have time for that. I put my phone into airplane mode, automatically kicks my app into offline mode. That's going to draw up all this information when I want to look at it. The other big thing is it's going to save my battery life. 2 of the biggest draws on your phone's battery are your screen and if it's searching for a signal. So if I put it in airplane mode and I'm kind of judicious in how I use my phone screen, I can get a couple of days, even out of this like 3-year-old piece of junk phone that's fritzing out on me. I can get a lot of battery life. I do carry an external charging pack for my GPS, my satellite communicator, and for my phone. It doesn't weigh a whole lot. It's good insurance to have, but rarely do I need it, especially if I'm day hunting when I put it in airplane mode. So that's a quick run through of offline maps. Again, I apologize. I can't demo on my phone. Might have to see if the old boss man will let me get a company phone or something for these in the future. Let's see, next up, we're going to go to our map tools. So these are going to be located on your phone. If you go along the bottom of your screen there, you saw offline maps in the lower left-hand corner. The next icon over says My Content, and then it says Tools. If you tap on Tools, you're going to see a bunch of options turn up. If you're watching on your computer or you're looking at web map like I am, it's in the upper right-hand corner here. You see all of these different tools. The first tool I'm going to demo is the most commonly used. That's our waypoints. So if I just zoom in here a little bit, let's say I'm going to want to go for a hike. I'm going to want to start right here. I'm going to go over to my waypoint tool. I hit add waypoint. I can grab it and drag it to this junction here. And I'm going to put it right there. On your phone, you do it just by tapping your finger. Wherever you tap, that's going to put the waypoint right there. I recommend zooming in as much as you can so that you can get it exactly where you need it to be. Again, just like with offline maps, I highly recommend naming these. So I'm just going to name this trailhead, even though it's not really a trailhead here. And then I also recommend changing the icon. I went through a while back and deleted all of my X icons because they don't really mean anything to me after the fact. A lot of times I was out in the field, I came across something, maybe it was a buck rub, maybe it was an elk wallow, maybe I flushed a grouse, and I just pulled my phone out and marked that real quick and then didn't do anything else. Well, the next year, I don't remember what that was, right? It's not very useful to me. With waypoints, the more effort you put in, the more useful they're going to be later on. So let me just say this is where I want to park the truck. I can choose this truck icon. If it's where I want to start a hike, I'll use the hiker icon. We have, I think we're almost at 100. We're pretty close. Say it's a good squirrel hunting spot, or there's sheep there, or maybe I saw Sasquatch. I'm gonna use the Sasquatch icon. So pick whatever makes sense to you. And then I also color code my waypoints. Now you can do this any number of ways. Personally, I color code my waypoints by species. I hunt just about everything Montana will let me hunt. So I have, my bear spots, black bear spots are one color. My turkey spots are a different color. My deer spots are a third color. Elk spots, upland bird spots, fishing spots, you name it. So I give them all a different color so that at a glance, when I zoom out on my map, I can see, oh, there's all my elk icons, there's all my bear icons, there's my deer, etc. And especially for, like elk and deer, I might find rubs for both, but I want to know the difference between the two of them at a glance. So that's an elk rub, that's a deer rub. So I do that by coloring, and then I'll name it, buck rub, something like that, of course. So I'm going to change the color on this. We're going to make it purple. If I want to make notes, I can do that. That's where I saw Bigfoot. If I have a picture of Bigfoot, I can add a photo in there. Didn't mean to open that up. You can take a photo from your phone and add it in there. You can take one from your phone's library, or you can use the camera. Reminds me of that old Mitch Hedberg joke. He said Bigfoot was just blurry. That's why there's no clear pictures of him, because he's just naturally like that. Next thing I can do is I can add these to a folder. You see, this is just a test account. I have a few different folders here. I'm going to add this to the test folder, and then I'm going to save. So what's the deal with those folders? Well, what's nice with folders is when I go into my content, again, I can group these however I want. Personally, what I do a lot of times is I will do it by species, or I will do it by a specific trip. Next weekend, my dad and I are going to go chase grouse kind of out in central eastern Montana, going to try to get some sage grouse, sharptails, etc. So I made a specific folder for that trip that I can share. So if I open up this test folder, you see I have 3 waypoints in here. What I can do is I can click share, and on my phone, or on my computer, it gives me this link. So I can copy this link, and I could, if your office uses Slack, I could Slack that to somebody. I can email it to somebody. I can message it to them on Facebook, what have you. On your phone, you can do the same thing. You can either share a folder, or if I just want to share a waypoint, if I click on this one, you'll see this share button down here. On your phone, it's going to be on the bottom of your screen when you tap on a waypoint. I can hit share, and on your phone, it's going to give you an option to text it, to email it, to Instagram message, Facebook message, whatever. It's going to give you the option to do that. Most people text them. But the cool thing with the folders is instead of sending all 25 grouse waypoints of places I want to hunt, I can go in and I can just share that folder at one shot. Instead of sending 25 text messages to my dad, I can be like, hey, here you go. These are the spots I'm planning to hunt. Take a look. Let me know what you think. So you can share that with anybody, whether they have an onX account or not. Even if they're a basic member, they can still receive shares from you if they don't have the app. Let's say that you are going out hunting by yourself and you want to share where you're going with your significant other, just for safety purposes, right? They're back home. They may not have onX on their phone. If you share it with them, they'll be able to receive that message. It'll ask them to download the app. It's a free download. And then they'll be able to see, hey, this is where they're parked. For heaven forbid you don't come home that night or they don't hear from you, they at least have a spot to say, hey, I know my husband or wife was planning to hunt this area. I'm worried about them. This is where they parked. They at least have a spot to go off of. All kinds of different use cases for sharing waypoints and sharing markups. Maybe it's sharing a tree stand with a buddy and saying, hey, go here in the morning. Maybe it's sharing a duck blind. Maybe it's sharing, hey, this is a spot I'm thinking about hunting. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think. Again, possibilities are endless there with the waypoints. If my phone was working, the next part I would show you, if you pull it up on your phone, it says mark my location. That should be kind of the center one in the top row on your phone. When you tap that, that is going to place a waypoint right where you're standing. So that's what I use 9 times out of 10 when I'm out in the field. I will mark my location so that when I park the truck, boom, mark my location. I got it there. When I get to my tree stand, if I don't, or I'm putting a new tree stand up, for example, mark my location. Then I have that tree stand and I'll name it and do all that stuff I talked about. If I get an animal down, if I see a rub, if I see something interesting, whatever you want to mark, that's what I do. And then again, I'll go in and change the icon, change the color, just like I did here. You can do that all on your phone, save all that information. If I want to take a picture of a wallow or a water hole, I'm going to do that. And it actually becomes kind of cool later on, especially if you add photos. Like I did a lot of duck hunting with my dog last year. I would take pictures of my dog with the ducks that we got or the pheasants that we got. And then it's kind of cool to have almost like a journal, a photo journal of the places you've been and the things that you've done, to be able to save those to look back on, in the off season and relive those moments. So kind of cool there. We're not going to be able to get to all of the tools, but a couple more I want to hit on. This line distance tool. So this would be, I'm just going to zoom in on a random spot here. I click the line distance tool. I'll click a spot on the map. I'm going to click another spot on the map. That draws a line and tells me how far it is. So some people will use this and they'll say, hey, I want to fence in this area. Okay, once I save it, it's going to tell me the perimeter, 0.7 miles. So that's a long fence. If I'm doing a smaller area, it might say that's 150 yards. That's how much fence I need to buy. Some people will use this to just highlight certain areas of a property, maybe an area where they don't want people to go. Like, hey, this is the buck sanctuary. We don't go in this area. We let that be the spot for the deer to go where they're not chased so that they don't run onto the neighbor's property or something like that. Some people will use it, let's say, let's say I'm right here. I want to know how far it is up to this road. I talked about using the compass mode earlier. That's one way to do it. This is just another way, whatever's most comfortable for you. And on your phone, you're just tapping this with your finger to place these dots. Again, you can place as many as you want and just go all over the place and go crazy. You can change the color just like you can with all of our other markups. You can mark notes, you can add it to folders, all that stuff's the same. I'm not going to save this one. I'm going to discard it. The next one is our area shape. So kind of similar. What this one is useful for, a lot of people are using this if you're planting food plots or doing land management on a private parcel, where I might have every food plot, I'm going to highlight it with an area shape. I'm going to make notes. I'm going to say this is corn. I'm going to change the color. I'm going to make it yellow because it's corn and save it. Then I know how much, before planting, I could mark this and say, all right, it's 16.48 acres. How much seed do I need? How much fertilizer do I need? If I'm spraying herbicide, how much of that do I need? And then if I place a bunch of these, you can kind of get a sense of, here's where I have corn. Let's say I have another one that's, if I just draw a quick one here, maybe that's soybeans, and I make that a different color. Just kind of giving you an example here. Obviously, you're probably not doing that in this area of the state, just, hypotheticals here. So you can do that. People will do it to mark areas where they want to log. Again, you could do this for areas that you want excluded or you want to keep people out of. You could do this for if you have a hunting club and you want to say, hey, this is an area we need to do a burn in or something like that. So the area shape tool, again, that's also available on your phone. If mine was working, I would show you what that looks like. Next tool, and this next one is for elite memberships only, so you have to have an elite membership to access this one, is our route builder. So again, this is available in your map layers or your map tools menu on your phone. I'm going to try to draw a route. I'm going to go right from our parking lot here at onX. Let's say, where should we go? Let's go up to Flathead Lake. Let's go north of Flathead. Let's go up in here. Let's say I want to try to hunt somewhere up here. Again, I've never been up here, so I'm not trying to hotspot if this happens to be your spot. But let's say I want to go right here. What's really cool is this is going to snap to the fastest route there. So you see, it takes us along the highway for a while, it takes us up to Kalispell. But then it's going to take you on the right Forest Service road as well to get to the area that you want to go. Maybe that's, the first spot. That's where we're going to stop. And then, hey, let's go up to this area. Boom. It's going to snap to that trail. It's going to show you the most direct route to get there. So pretty cool way if you're going to an area you haven't been to before to be able to plan a route. I can save that. Again, I can name this something if I want. I can share it. So it's really cool if you got a whole bunch of people, you're saying, hey, we're all driving up separately. Here's the way to get up to the cabin, or here's the way to get up to where I got the wall tent pitched. And everybody can have that route and see where they need to go. Then the last kind of tool I want to talk about, we're kind of getting short on time here. If you close out of your tools menu on the right-hand side, it's going to say tracker. If you click on the tracker button there, you're going to see a start button. If you click that, that's going to start tracking you everywhere that you walk or drive. So this is another super cool feature that I use in a variety of ways. Let's say I'm going to a new area, I park the truck, boom, I start my tracker. That's going to drop a little breadcrumb trail everywhere that I've walked, so that A, I can find my way back out, at the end of the day. I like to use it for, sometimes it's just, man, how far did I walk today? Like, oh man, I did 12 miles. That's a pretty good day. You can see, your speed. You can see how far you went. When you save that when you save that track, it's going to give you an elevation profile. So if you're hunting elk in Western Montana, you can see how much elevation you gained and lost throughout the day. And it's also, another safety thing. You could send that to somebody. I used it, the one elk I've killed. I had my track running. I was high enough elevation where I had some cell service. So I was able to send it to some buddies back in town and say, hey, the truck's parked here. Here's the waypoint. Here's the track I took in, to where the elk is now. I'll send them a waypoint to where the elk is. I'll send them the tracks that they know exactly kind of the best path to get to where I am. When I'm whitetail hunting, I'm going to mark every path into every one of my stands so that I can follow it in the dark. If I have, say, a buddy's coming out hunting with me, never been to that stand before, I can send him that track and say, hey, follow this track. It's going to lead you around the big swamp so you don't get wet, or it's going to lead you around the bedding area so you don't blow them out. Duck blinds, you name it. You could share that track with folks. And sometimes it is just nice to, like I said, to be able to send that to people, so they can see where you've been. You can see. Sometimes it's just bragging rights, like, oh man, I did 12 miles today. How many did you do? Oh, you only did 6. I'm cooler than you. Stuff like that. One more tool I guess I forgot to mention is on a waypoint is our wind calendar. I'm sorry if I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit. But if you place a waypoint on your map, what you can do, here's what I'm going to show you one that doesn't have it on there yet. This is a waypoint I placed this summer, just when I was doing some testing. I'm going to hit this wind direction button. You can do this on your phone as well. Tap on the waypoint and kind of scroll up in that card. You'll see the wind direction. Now what I can do is I can have this show me the current wind, 6 miles an hour out of the northwest. So I can get at a glance, what's the wind doing? I can also have it show me optimal wind. Let's just say, again, this isn't a spot I've hunted, but let's just say I got a deer stand there and I know it's only good on a north, northwest, northeast wind. I'm going to apply that. And then when I close out, you can see both of these waypoints, they have good winds for that stand, meaning I can look at a glance, man, those are good options for today. If this is only a south wind stand, I can see at a glance, that's a bad wind because it's red. What you can also do is you can go into your wind calendar. That's over here on the toolbar. You can also do this on your phone. You can go into tools and open up the wind calendar. That's going to show me all of my waypoints that I have the wind selected. It's going to tell me at 3 different times of the day what the wind is predicted to do at that location. And I can go out, future days. Let's say I wanted to hunt this Sunday. I'm able to hunt in the evening, for example. This might be a good stand. This is a bad stand. These might be okay. These are good. This one's bad. just really helping you be more efficient in making a decision. You mark all your tree stands or all your duck blinds. You say, all right, these 3 have good wins. Those other 17, not good wins. Helps you just narrow it down a lot faster, helps rule out some of that, analysis paralysis, as they say. Felt like I went through that very quickly. So we kind of talked about my content a little bit when we talked about folders. Everything you save is going to be in my content. So if you want to go and find a waypoint or a track or a line or an area shape later, those are all going to be listed here. On your phone, it says my content. It's in between offline maps and tools down at the bottom. So I can go in and see the 2 lines I saved. There's one I saved in the spring when I was doing another masterclass. There's the one I saved just now. So you can easily go back and find those if you want to delete them, if you want to save them, whatever you want to do. Everything lives in my content. A new feature we've released recently is our trail camera feature. So this is brand new. This is something that is still kind of being rolled out. It's only on web for right now. It will be coming on mobile very soon. But if I click create a trail camera, what I can do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to name this, let's say I have a Bushnell camera. It'd be helpful if I could spell it correctly. Bushnell camera 1. That's Bushnell. I'm going to select the brand. Model, let's say it's a Cellucor 20. It's a cellular camera. If it's a non-cellular, you'd select SD card. Not all of this information is required. Well, let's say it takes 12 batteries, it's got a 16 gigabyte SD card. I'm going to make this yellow. This camera is in the field. It was placed today. I'm just going to name it a test. And then what's cool is I can put what direction it's facing. Is it facing northeast? If you see this camera right in the office here, I can post, show where it's facing. I can hit save. So what's cool here is I can kind of more easily keep inventory of all my cameras. I can see when I last checked the SD card, the batteries, how long it's been at a current location, and then what'll be coming in the future. Well, right now we have uploading photos. You got to do it on your computer, like I have right here. I could go in if I took them from my phone, if I saved them on there, if I had the cell, sending them there, or if I just had the SD card and I pulled it, plug it into my computer, I can upload all my pictures there. So a handy way to manage all of your trail camera pictures, have them all in one spot, and be able to more easily, what's the word I'm looking for? Not process, but more easily dig through all that data to try to make sense of, all right, hey, this is when this buck is coming through, or this is when the elk were moving through this area. If I want to move the camera, I can go back and move it. And then what'll show here is all the different placements that I had it. So I can remember, oh, this picture was taken on June 20th, but June 20th, it was at this other spot way on the other side of the property. I moved it on July 15th. Now it's sitting, where it currently is here. What I can also do is, you see, I've kind of just messed
Hey guys, Jack's computer died. He'll be right back. He's just plugging it in. So while Jack is fixing his computer, I'm going to go ahead and post the giveaway link in the chat for everybody. So we can go ahead and have everybody sign up for the giveaway while we're waiting for Jack to come back. So I'll go ahead and post this a couple times. And so if you have any other questions, let me know and I'll answer those while he's getting his computer back.
All right, I'm back, folks. I apologize for that. My computer just cut out on me. So apologies for the myriad of technical difficulties. I work for a tech company. You think I would be better practiced at this. But anyway, we were talking, if I remember correctly, talking about trail cameras. I was basically at the end of that there. Last thing I'm going to do real quick, we're going to go into our different web map options, or some of our different base map options. My apologies, I should say. So here's where we were before. Real quick, on your phone in the lower right-hand corner, there's going to be a base map selector button. It's going to look kind of like this one down the lower right side of my screen here. If I click on that, I've got a few different options for base maps. Most people by default is going to be satellite imagery. So if I zoom in here, it's kind of what we're used to seeing, that satellite image. If I go to topo, that's going to go to kind of like a paper topo map with the different topographic lines that you're able to see some of the different slope and some of the landscape there. What I use most of the time is the hybrid layer, or the hybrid base map, I should say, because it gives me the best of both worlds. I can see the satellite imagery, and I can also see the terrain. I use this 90% of the time. I'll use topo if I'm looking for a certain kind of slope aspect. If I'm looking for north facing or south facing, I will look at topo just to kind of get a sense of, if I'm looking for south facing slopes for Spring Bear, for example. Then I'll flip it over to hybrid to kind of get a more complete sense of what I'm seeing there. Something new that we've added is this recent imagery button. You may not be seeing this on your phone just yet. Most people should have it. We're kind of slowly rolling it out right now. If you don't see it yet, make sure your app is updated. It's the most updated version. Then you should start seeing this here. If I click on recent imagery, you can see the map kind of changes a little bit. And what I'm going to do to kind of show you the power of this is I'm going to go back up to our wildlife refuge here. So this is the recent imagery. On the bottom of my screen, you can see it was taken sometime between July 24th and August 7th. If I turn it off, you can see how that water changes. So this is one application here where it's really cool. Let's say I want to see, hey man, what are these potholes looking like out on the prairie? Are they holding water? Is there more water than normal, less water than normal? I can start to look back. Come fall, you're going to be able to track the harvest with this. When I go pheasant hunting in South Dakota this year, I'm going to be looking at that and seeing, man, is the corn coming out? Is it staying there? Last year we hit it just perfect. The corn was coming out, combines were rolling as we were hunting, like a pheasant hunter's dream, right? Birds were pouring out of that corn. it was all still standing, would have been tougher hunting. What's also cool is you can go backwards 2 weeks at a time. And this is just on web map right now, I should say. This will be coming on the mobile app on your phone later on. For right now, it's only available on web. But I can see, man, what did this look like in the spring? Maybe I'm wondering, what nesting conditions were like for ducks or something. And that's about as far back as I can go. There's April. So this is going to be cool as we move on. You're going to have a library of images so that we'll be able to do like a year over year look and be like, man, what did it look like spring of 23, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So that's the recent imagery. That's brand new. You do have to be an elite member to have access to that. So that's one more plug for going to that elite membership. That's one of those tools that you get. So again, that's in the base map, button there. The last thing I want to show, and this is available on mobile and web as well, but it works better if I get to an area with some mountains, is our 3D map. So I'm going to go up into the Bob Marshall Wilderness here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click 3D map. Now you see my map has tilted. If I zoom in a little bit on the map, now I can get a good sense of what these mountains actually look like, because topographic maps lie. At least they lie to me. I might look at something and be like, that doesn't look that steep. And then I actually get out there and I say, oh man, that actually is, it's a lot steeper than I thought it was. And you can do this on your phone as well. Same spot, go into your base map button there, and you can turn that on and get a sense of, I can zoom right in on this as well. If I want, I can turn my recent imagery on and off, see what things are looking like. This would be really cool in the spring to check snow levels if you're looking to get into the mountains, see what that looked like. So that's your base maps there, your 3D, your 3 different base map options, along with your recent imagery. All right, so we are about at an hour and a half. I'm going to end my share right now. I think Sarah already put the giveaway into the chat there. So if everybody wants to make sure they get entered that, and then we'll get to some Q&A here. Let me pull that up and get to some of the questions we had. Had a question about using slope angle and topo lines to find wildlife movement. So let me go back to my map here. What you can do, let's take a look at some topo lines. I'm going to go out of 3D. I'm going to go right to topo. So I'm going to get out of the Bob here. Just going to get back closer to town. What I might do, let's say I'm looking for elk bedding. We know elk tend to like to bed on the north sides of ridges, north sides of mountains, because it's a little bit colder. They're typically going to hold more timber. Let me get down here. This is a little bit less steep country. Again, I haven't been here. So what I can do is, I know the wider the lines are, the flatter the terrain is. Elk don't like to bed on super steep terrain. So what I might do is I might say this area here, this is a little bit flatter, it's a little bit of a bench here. That might be a spot to look for elk. I know right here, man, this is real steep. Probably not going to be bedded down there, plus it's south facing. But if I go here, this looks like a pretty good area, right? Now I'm just doing this based on topo. I might turn on my satellite or my hybrid. Oh, that still does look pretty good because there's some timber there, right? That might be a good spot where elk might bed, because it's flat, it's got some timber, there's some water nearby. What else you can do, this is a layer I didn't talk about earlier, is if I go into my land and access folder, I can turn on this slope angle layer. And now I can see, if I go along the top here, I have my legend where it's going to tell me red and purple is real steep, green is not so steep. So I can tell that was the area we were looking at, confirms, yep, that's not very steep. I think I read somewhere that elk, they want to bed if it's like 20 degrees, less than 20 degree slope is what they prefer to bed on. That checks that box for me. Now, is there for sure going to be out there? Of course not. There might be, there might not be. There's a whole host of factors that could go into whether or not there are elk in any particular area. But at least I know, cross this off, cross this off, cross this stuff off. This might be pretty good. This stuff might be pretty good, right? If I'm specifically looking for elk bedding areas, because I know that they tend to want to bed on those flatter spots. So that's one way you can use the topo and the slope angle. Good question there. How do I figure out a distance from an object? For example, make a quarter-mile circle around a residence to avoid it during bird hunting. Great question. I'm going to go back to my map here. So this is one that we get quite a bit, especially in states that have like a setback rule or a safety zone. Let me turn this layer off here quick. So I'm just going to go back to Missoula, and I'm just going to find a spot kind of on the edge of town here. All right. So let's say I'm going to get out of this area. Let me find a good one. We'll go right here. Let's say there's this house right here, right? And I might want to hunt this state piece. Again, I've never been here. But I know I have to be a certain distance from a residential area to discharge a firearm. Every state's different. Make sure you know the rules where you are. I'm going to add a waypoint there. I'm going to hit save. So I have one on this residential area. Again, you can do this on mobile. I'm going to hit waypoint radius. Now let's say that our distance is 450 yards, is close to a quarter mile. I'm going to hit that. I'm going to apply it. Now I know I've got to be outside of this circle to legally be able to discharge a firearm in this, in this hypothetical situation. So that's one use. That's kind of what the question was about of, hey, how do I mark a distance from an area so I know not to shoot? I will also do this on tree stands that I have where I'm archery hunting. What I'm going to do, just in the interest of time, let's pretend that this was a tree stand that I had marked, and I'm not going to shoot at a deer over 50 yards. I'm going to apply that. Now I know at a glance everything that's within 50 yards of this stand location. Maybe I'm using this when I'm setting a stand up, and I take a look on my phone and I say, all right, can I shoot to all the areas, all the trails that I want to? Yes, I can. Great spot to put it. If I say, oh man, there's a trail that's running right up here that I'd love to be able to shoot to, I'm going to want to move my stand a little bit closer to there. Of course, obviously, this is somebody's house. This is all just a hypothetical for demonstration purposes here. Let's do one or two more. Any way to get driving directions to pinned points? Yes. So what you can do on your mobile app, if you mark a waypoint, save it to your map, and then once you have that saved, all you need to do is tap on it. Along the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a few options. It'll say edit, add to folder, share, go to waypoint, navigate to. If you tap navigate to, that will allow you to open up directions, driving directions in your driving direction mapping app. I did a horrible job of explaining that. Google Maps, Apple Maps, etc. So I just tapped on one on my phone. It's going to look like that. It's going to say Google Maps. I hit that. It's going to take me into Google, and that's going to route me from my current location to that spot so I can get driving directions to that waypoint. So that's one way to do that. Let me check one more time. I think that's about all we had in. All right. One more here on sharing. I maybe didn't cover it close enough earlier. So again, if you want to share something with somebody, you can, just tap on the waypoint or the markup you want to share on your app, click the share button, text it to them, email it to them, Facebook it to them, whatever you want. One thing I didn't mention earlier, if you share something, they cannot then turn around and share it with somebody else. So if I want to share all of my duck blinds with a buddy that we're going duck hunting together, and hey, here's all the spots, that person can't then go share it with all of his or her buddies. So it's nice that you own the content. You can make changes to it. You can change the color, the name, etc. That'll show up on everybody that you share it with. It'll show up on their side. They can't make changes to it. And then let's say for some reason you don't want them to have access to that information anymore, you can pull that away from them. So maybe I want to just share a tree stand with a buddy, and then later on, man, I don't want them going to that tree stand anymore, or I don't want them hunting that area. I revoke that access so that they're not able to see it anymore. And while I'm on the topic, a question we get quite often: can onX employees see my waypoints? No, we cannot. We can't see anything that you mark on your map. So that's something I saw it posted in a hunting forum earlier this week of like, man, I don't mark anything on my map because I don't want onX employees going to my spots. We can't see any of that. That would be like, number one, horrible thing for us to do here. We would never betray your trust like that. So you are safe in that aspect. We can't see anything that you're marking there or anything like that. So rest assured. Man, I feel like we had a lot of technical difficulties today, but I feel like hopefully everybody still learned something through all of that. Thanks everybody for sticking on with us. Still have, an hour and a half and a couple hundred people here watching. So appreciate that. We do have more classes coming up this fall. We have an upland vest dump next Monday. So if you're an upland hunter, you can kind of see what some folks carry in their vests. We have an archery elk pack dump. We have another 101 on September 14th that I promise to have some of these issues ironed out. So if you want to tune back in for that, do that. We're going to do some rifle elk hunting, some whitetail ones, all kinds of different stuff. So double check that masterclass page on our website. Get signed up for any interesting ones that you find interesting. And make sure you enter that giveaway. I'll send you an email tomorrow if you've won. And again, thanks everybody for sticking with me through the myriad of technical difficulties, and we'll have them ironed out for the next one. Have a good one, everybody.